Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, just with a quick intro before we get into the show. We've got two interviews to bring you on this show. You can hear from the two ever-presents at the PDC Q School, Ashley Holgate and Ian Lever. First up, you're going to hear from Ashley Holgate, who spoke to our good friend Matthew Kiernan, the darting nerd. Then you'll hear my chat with Ian Lever, and we'll be back at the end to say goodbye.
So next up on the Weekly Dartscast is Ashley Holgate, who's been to every Q School since it began in 2011. Ashley, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
Yes, not too bad under the circumstances. And we have our fingers crossed, of course, that Q School will happen in a couple of weeks' time when we're recording this. Firstly, I think it'd be great to talk about darts in your family, because I think you've got an interesting a few stories about that, haven't you?
Yeah, well, my granddad was a great dart player. He worked on the land. He worked for James's Watercress and Lavender Farms over in Mitcham, which anyone who knows darts in Mitcham is right opposite the Goat, which where the Morfax was, where the likes of Peter Manley and Dave Askew have played out of. And in 1933, he won the News of the World. It was only London and home counties then. It wasn't like the last News of the World, which was basically the whole of England. But he entered the competition and he came out the winner, and went to the Horns. The final was played at the Horns in Kennerton, and he went up there and bashed up the man and came home with a trophy. He had a sarsaparilla and a Coca-Cola, got on the tube, came home and went to work the very next day. I dealt with a girl when Price went to work the very next day, but he had £500,000 in his pocket. My granddad had about 2 and 6, I think. But and then the rest of the family all played, apart from my mum and her older sister. But all my aunts and uncles, they all play, and they all played to a great level. My nan ran the local league out the British Legion in Mitcham, and yeah, darts has been part of our family. And I picked it up when my grandfather died in 1993, which was 60 years to the year that he won the News of the World. That's when I started playing to see if I could maybe win a trophy and put it next door to my granddad's News of the World trophy in my nan's dart cabinet. And I played for the Old Sergeant in the Young's pub down in Wandsworth, in the Garrett Lane in Wandsworth, and luckily I joined a team that was the best in the league, and we won loads of trophies, so I got to put loads of trophies next to my granddad's trophy.
Great, and I think do you have him on the back of your shirt? I think there's quite a nice connection there. Yeah.
One of my dart shirts, I have Kenneth. He was christened Kenneth Enever. We think that was a spelling mistake, but the more we look at the birth certificate now, we just think it was a messed up H, but it came out Kenett Enever. And I have a shirt with Kenneth Enever, NOTW, News of the World 1933, and I also on my chain, the back of my chain on my neck, I have his News of the World Winners Medal, which goes everywhere with me. So he's always with me. If I was half as good as him, I would have got a tour card, the first Q School, but that was when back in they played from 9 feet, double in, double out. He was throwing 6-inch nails through cigarettes out of his brother's mouth to the bald. If I tried that, I'd end up killing the person with the cigarette. He wouldn't smoke again, put it that way.
What a fantastic image, I love it.
I'd be head up in court somewhere along the line.
Yes, PDPA might have something to say about that. So, I mean, you touch on Q School there. That was 10 years ago, unbelievably. Time flies. What are your memories of that first one in 2011?
I believe 117 people turned up for the first one in Wigan, and I literally, me and my mum had just sold a house and I had a little bit of money, and I thought, you know what, I've given up drinking. I don't drink anymore. I'm 11 years, 8 months sober. I'm going to see if I can play the game with these people sober. And I thought, right, let's enter this. So I entered and I walked in. I was like, whoa, there's a who's who of the next generation dart players. The likes of Adam Smith-Neal was there. The old school people, Ian Joplin, he was there. Jimmy Mann, the cream from Cheam, he was there. And it was an eye-opener. My first day, it was the first of 6 legs. My first day I played a young gun. I think he was only 16 or 17, Daz Whittingham from the Midlands area. And he should have been at home doing his homework, but instead he was on board 3, bashing the hell out of me. And next day I won my board. I got all the way through to the board final. The third day I went out first round again, and the fourth day I got through to the board final. And I thought, I really like this. And you got to see players that had fallen off of the circuit trying to get their card back, and then players that were trying to establish themselves as the up-and-comers, the youngsters, and you thought, well, he's going to be good, he's going to be good, he's going to be good. Further on down the line, I played in one of the Q schools, I played Nathan Aspinall. He bashed me 6-0, and I thought, well, this kid can play. And look what he's doing now. So you get to see the old school players falling off the tour and trying to get back, and the new young guns coming on. And it's an eye-opener. I mean, the talent pool out there is so big at the moment, it's unbelievable. And no one fears each other. I go along because I love darts. Am I good enough to get a tour card? Probably not. Have I thrown darts that are good enough to get me a tour card? Yes, I have, but I don't throw them consistent enough like these guys. But anyone that wants to play darts to quite a high level and in a professional atmosphere like the PDC puts out there for you, with the demise of the BDO, you have to go to Q School. To play the Challenge Tour, you have to go to Q School. So this is why you're going to get a lot of people going to Q School that are not good enough to get a tour card. They know deep down they're not good enough to get a tour card, but they still want to play darts, and they don't want to go to Switzerland, Geneva, and this, that, and the other. They want to play up and down the M6, M1 areas. They want to play Barnsley, Milton Keynes. They want to play Wigan, and to do that, you have to play the Challenge Tour. And to do that, you have to go to Q School.
And what do you? It's an interesting point you raised there, actually, because what do you make of that sort of Keith Carter and Brian Hudson often find themselves on the other end of this argument of, oh, well, they're not good enough. Why are they spending all this money, to go?
Because they can. Because they can. Because Uncle Barry, everyone calls him, gave people the opportunity to chase a dream. And if that man this year goes to Q School, and here we are in February, it's normally in January, so put it back into normal terms. In January, he has 4 days of darts. Like me, he sees the up-and-comers and he sees the people that have fallen off, and he doesn't do any good. If he wants to go back next year, he can start saving the game. And until they stop that, he's allowed to chase that dream. And it's only Barry Hearn and the PDC that can stop you chasing that dream, but they gave you that dream to chase. They gave the likes of, look at Nathan Aspinall, I've mentioned him earlier on. Look what he's done. He's gone from just about to quit to winning the UK Open, semi-finalist in the World Championship 2 years in a row. Bought his house, financially safe with his family. A dream. He saw the dream. He chased it. Don't get me wrong. He's got natural God-given ability, but he had to put a lot of work in. A lot of work. And he's done that work, and look where he is now. Look at Gerwyn Price, 7 years. It's 7 years ago. Q School qualifier to world champion. Never been done before. He saw the dream. He thought, I'm not running around on a rugby pitch anymore. I'm going to play darts. And Barry said, here's a dream, chase it. He chased it, caught it. Caught it in the biggest way possible. World champion, world number 1. So it's possible. Some people just flat out are not good enough, but they want to play darts. Let them play. If you've got 400 people in a room paying £450 to the PDC for the opportunity to chase this dream, and out of those 400 people, probably 250 are not good enough, they've still got £250, £450. It's got to help a prize fund somewhere, isn't it? Put the prize money up on the Challenge Tour.
Well, it's a good point you make on the Challenge Tour, actually, the prize fund, because that hasn't gone up in years.
No, and it's exactly the same as a youth, and the youth can play both the youth and the Challenge Tour, which is a bit off. It's like the age-old argument about you got the men's open at Eastbourne. Back in the day, you had the men's open, you had the open, and the ladies could play the ladies singles and the open. Well, the youth can now play the Challenge Tour, and they can also play the youth tour. They get 2 bites of the cherry. I mean, there's lots of politics involved in darts, and there's lots of nuances that shouldn't happen, maybe that shouldn't happen, but it is happening. Until they address all those points, we just got to carry on playing what we want to play. I mean, I want to play darts, and I don't want to play. I was involved in the game in Chelsea, and I was 1 round away from the money, and we were playing in I called it the bouncy castle. We're playing in the marquee in the car park with a false floor, and love him to pieces. John Henderson, pre-diet John Henderson, when he was still with the BDO. He walked past me as I was throwing with my last dart double top. The floorboard moved, my dart went into orbit, I lost the match. And you're playing on the bouncy castle for world ranking points on a false floor in a marquee in a car park. But the PDC, you've got 32 balls, all identical, all on a concrete floor. You, your opponent, and the chalker and the dartboard, that's it. everyone wants to play under that. Everybody should want to play in those surroundings. So we have to play the Challenge Tour. And then if you're good enough in the Challenge Tour and you have a couple of, good competitions, like Richie Headhouse and David Evans, they've now got a 2-year tour card through the Challenge Tour.
We talk about those surroundings, and those surroundings were very much put to the test in January of last year in 2020, and God, it seems like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? But it was the busiest Q School ever, and Paul Nicholson very astutely christened it as Q School, as in with a Q, because of all the queues for the bars, and the practice room wasn't in the same room. What did you make of all of that?
I'm one of the very, very few, if not the only one, of the pro player. Well, you class as a pro if you join the PDPA, I guess, Professional Dart Players Association. But I don't drink alcohol, so I can go to the bar, or I can go to the vending machine and get myself a bottle of water and 2 bottles of Coke, and I'm set. Those people that are going in and they feel the need to drink alcohol, there's 5-6 people deep at the bar, and if that's what you want to do, that's what you got to put up with. That's what you got to put up with. But the PDC put on. There was 32 boards and 16 practice boards. So, it was okay. You wasn't waiting 8, 9, 10 in line for a throw on the practice board, because not everyone practices at the same time anyway. I mean, you've got 32 balls, so you've got 64 players playing at any given time, and 16 practice balls. I think that, or maybe it was 12 practice balls, but whatever it was, I thought it was ample. But I mean, at the end of the day, everyone drinking alcohol, they've got a queue at the bar. I'm just standing there watching them, going, I used to do that, not anymore.
And of course, this time, and I made an allusion to this in sort of one of the short comedy skits that I did on Twitter, but there's no alcohol this time, or in terms of the bar. I guess that goes in your favour.
There'll be a lot of alarm clocks going off at 6 o'clock in the morning, where people are going to have to get up, go and have their breakfast, and get back to the room and down a few cans of lager or half a bottle of brandy, whatever, to get themselves lubed up for when the games actually start. Again, I'll walk out with a bottle of Coke and a bottle of water while I'm playing, and the Coke just to put some sugar in my system. But there'll be a lot of cans in hotel rooms, or a lot of cans in cars, I would imagine. Because you're never ever going to... The game started in the bars and the inns way back in the day, so you're never going to take the alcohol out of the game. You took the alcohol off the TV, that's fine, and made it more professional to watch. I understand that. But before the game, if people think that dart players don't drink, they're living in cloud cuckoo land.
So Q School this time around obviously is going to be very different, and touch wood, it's still on at this point. We're still waiting on news of if there's going to be any testing, and obviously it's going to be in a bubble. Or what do you make of all of that?
Well, Danny Baggish tweeted this morning, or yesterday, and he put a scare into a few people, saying it's a 10-day mandatory quarantine. But I do believe that's only for foreigners coming to the country. For the foreign players coming across, i.e. the boys from America, him and Dan Lowby, they're going to have to come across, and I think that's just not just for dart players. I think that's for anyone entering the country from a foreign country, has to do a 10-day quarantine. So that's going to set them back a few quid if they have to quarantine in a hotel room, if they haven't got someone to quarantine with. So that's going to added expenditure to them, so they may end up pulling out. Because if you think you've got to come over 10 days before Q School starts, 10 days from tomorrow, I believe. So they have to get here today and then do 10 days. And 10 days in a hotel room. If you get booked far enough in advance and do a Premier Inn, that's £35 a night or £40 a night. That's 400 quid right there. Plus the £450 to enter, plus the plane trip over, plus the 3 nights at £80 odd plus VAT in the Hilton that we've got to do. You might find a few people pulling out from the overseas players. I mean, Danny Baggish he played brilliant in the World Championship, so he's got to go. Him and Dan Lowby. Dan Lowby was beaten by the clap machine. I believe that he would have hit that 7-7 in a heartbeat, because he's a brilliant player. I just play against it. I played with and against his father back in America when I lived in America. They must come over thinking, I am good enough. I've been in the World Championships. I am good enough to get a tour card. So they're on the first 3 days against the people like me and your Keith Carters and so on and so forth. So they must think that they're going to get through those 3 days, whichever 3 days, the first or second 3 days that they're playing. into the final 4 days. So it's not so much of a punt for them, and especially if they've got a sponsor. That's the big thing in darts these days. You have to have a sponsor because the costs are spiralling.
Yes, and just touching on that two-stage process, which is a new addition this year. Obviously, it was brought in due to COVID, but I suspect that might actually be the future of the way that Q School is done, in future years. What do you make of that?
I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair on the people that have to play the first or second set of 3 days, because their expenditure is just astronomical. As I say, you're looking at £80 odd a night for 3 nights. So say it's £240 plus the VAT. Then if you're lucky enough to get through, well, I say lucky enough, if you're good enough to get through those, you've got to do another 4 days. You've got to go home. Say, for instance, in my case, I'm in the first set of 3 days. So I've got to play those 3 days. If I get through, say for instance I get through on the first day, or no, the last day. So I've paid the £240 for the 3 hotel nights in the hotel. I then have to go all the way home, and then I have to come back and spend another 4 nights at £80 a night in the hotel. Whereas those boys that have just been shoehorned into the last 4 days, they've only got that one expenditure. So I don't think that's fair at all, to be honest with you. It is what it is, and those are the rules, and if you don't want to play by the rules, don't play at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, that argument, because we always hear from Barry Hearn in relation to, no free passes, and the cream always rises, and yet there are some free passes for those guys in that second stage, which...
32 of them, and then you've got the likes of Kev Painter, who is a major winner, was a Players' Championship winner. He's in the first 3 days with me. Don't get me wrong, he's had a lean couple of years, but that's not all to do with darts. It's whatever goes on behind the scenes, and that's for him to talk about. But it's not all to do with darts. But he's a major winner, and one of the guys who was talking about this in the start about, are you going to Q School? I got asked at the last challenge tour, are you going to Q School? And I said, yes, I am. And they kind of like smiled, an evil smile, and I was like, yeah. I said, well, until you make it, impossible for me to go, I'm going to go. He said, well, we're working on that. And I said, really? I said, so you want to get rid of the dead weight and all that? He said, yeah. He said, there's too many people going. I said, well, earlier on in the year, I beat a 3-time world champion, the first man ever to take the world championship out of the British Isles, and the first man to win it in 3 separate locations, i.e. John Parr. I beat him 5-0. So if I'm not allowed to go, surely he's not allowed to go. And a cough and a splutter. I was only joking. Oh, of course you were.
That was a great result, by the way, for you. So
and I beat him, and then I beat Dave Askew the very next day. But against Dave Askew's game, there is the biggest asterisk in the world, and I don't class it as a victory, because 2 hours before we played, the man's dad died. And I give the man 12 out of 10 for standing in the hockey and throwing darts and not pulling out. Much kudos to the man. I said to him, Dave, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I'll do whatever you want to do. And he said, let's play, Ashley, and we'll play. And I played, and I beat him 5-0. That wasn't a 5-0 victory. But against John Parr played awful, and I played slightly less awful. And I beat him 5-0. So by rights, by these people saying, the dead weight shouldn't go, John Parr's not allowed in, and he's a 3-time world champion.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. It'll go on for a long time, I think, won't it?
Where do you stop people playing, though? This is my point. Where do you stop people? Who has the right to stop people playing? You charge an entrance fee, £450. People pay it. They've got the right to play, surely.
Certainly not going to be the last time it comes up as a discussion point.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Well, Ashley, look, thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's some really interesting stuff, and we wish you all the best at Q School, and here's hoping it's a safe one.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You'll see some tweets, I'm sure, from various people. I'd just like to mention Barry Cox. Barry Cox used to MC for Kevin Painter, and I've talked him into going. He's friends with Aaron Turner, and we were all lumped in at 200 to 1. Without throwing a dart, this man's down to 12 to 1. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers because he does West Ham TV, and I think they've all had a punt on him, and he's down at 12 to 1 to get a tour card. So fair play, Barry. Good on you, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ashley. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you later.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the 2 ever presents at Q School, Ian Lever. Thanks very much for the time, Ian. How you doing?
Not too bad at all. thanks, Alex.
Now, we'll come back to Q School a little bit later, but I want to start by going right back to the beginning for you in darts. Where did the interest first come from?
Well, my father was a very established player around the Blackburn and the northwest sort of area back in the early 70s. He was a Lancashire individual champion. He did play for the National Darts Association, a Great Britain Lancashire team, and he had an England call-up for the NDAGB, but he couldn't play BDO darts because he worked Saturdays. So the interest stemmed really from childhood. We always had a dartboard in the house, and my first pub team I played for when I was 15.
You mentioned Lancashire there. I know county darts has been a big part of your career. 2019, you made your 150th appearance for Lancashire. You made your debut back in the 1980s. What do you remember about those first few games that you had for your county?
The first few games, well, I can remember the very first game we played Essex, and I was nervous. I got beat 2-0. It was best of 3 legs back in the day. Played for Lancashire B. Seth Schofield beat me. I do remember the name, and I was shaking when I came off. In fact, I was that nervous I couldn't really put my darts away. But sort of after that, I played again. The next month, got the man of the match, and then they put me into the A team. So it stemmed from there.
And what highlights or moments, games stick with you from playing for Lancashire over the years?
Well, Lancashire were quite successful back in the late 80s, early 90s. One particular year, I think it was 1988, we won the Premier League and we won the knockout at Puelli. I played 6 games that day and won them all. So yeah, the crack side of the late 80s, early 90s was really special.
And we should mention as well, when you next play for Lancashire, it will be under the UKDA banner, the first game scheduled for mid-September, fingers crossed. What did you make of the switch for county darts from the BDO to the UKDA last year?
I was disappointed that the BDO subsided. Obviously being brought up with the BDO. I did join the PDC sort of 2004. And while my allegiance now is to the PDC, I'm sad to see the BDO actually go. But the UK, I just wish it every success, basically.
Definitely. Well, let's circle back to individual darts. And as you mentioned there, you started to play PDC events in 2004. What was the main factor behind your decision to start entering the PDC events back then?
Well, in fact, I think it was 2003 when I got to 40, when I was 40, and the PDC was running the Las Vegas Open, and I fancied doing something special for my birthday, so I joined the PDC. There was a few Lancashire players playing PDC events, such as Ronnie Baxter, who was a great personal friend of mine when we were young. We played a lot of pairs together. Mark Holding was playing. Paul Williams was playing. So I decided to join and go to Las Vegas. And it's not looked back since.
2004, 2005, you played at the Reebok in Bolton for the UK Open. What were those experiences like playing in a big PDC major event like that?
It was electrifying playing at Bolton. I mean, I'm only 12 miles away from Bolton, and the atmosphere was unbelievable. I mean, I played in front of large crowds before, such as the News of the World Divisional Finals and things like that. But playing at the UK Open with the TV cameras, it was really special, really good. Enjoyed it.
And for the next 5 or 6 years, we often see you in the floor events in the PDC, and then 2011 rolls around and the introduction of Q School and tour cards to play on the main PDC circuit. What was that first Q School like 10 years ago?
I mean, the early years of the PDC, they played pubs, and to see it evolve now and to see it run like it's professional, it is what it says on the tin. All those players, it's tough. It's just special to play in these PDC events, playing good darts, playing good people. And
before then, it was obviously pay your entry and you could play in the events, but aside from the UK Open qualifiers, then it became a little bit of a closed shop just to the tour card holders. Was that hard to adjust to the new system, not being able to pay and enter all the events like you did before?
It was disappointing, I suppose, to a certain extent, but those top professionals, to actually compete with them when you're actually working is very difficult. And I'm a bit older now. I'm not so disappointed. I'll just keep playing as long as I enjoy the game.
Good to hear. Well, you mentioned the professionals one that we've got to mention, a certain Michael van Gerwen. I want to take you back to 2014, those UK Open qualifiers. You had a great run to a last 16 in one of them, and you play Michael, who only a few months earlier become the world champion. What was that like?
I had a good run that day. I beat some notable players. Mark Walsh, John Bowles. That day was special because I was really on form, and when I made the last 16, I knew that I'd actually qualified. There was £1,000 prize money, and it with 3 apiece with me and Michael, and I seem to remember I had 2 darts at top to go 4-3 up, but missed it, and the rest is history. He finished up a 6-3 winner, just to grace the same board as these people is an experience.
That run that day got you in the UK Open again, the first year that it was held in Minehead, 9 years after your last appearance in the UK Open. What was it like then heading off to Minehead, not playing at the Reebok, but still being back involved in one of those big events again?
It was a long drive down to Minehead, I do remember that. It was... I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the Reebok. Obviously, being at the Reebok, only being down the road, I knew a lot of people in that crowd. Minehead was a bit different. Whilst I knew people, it wasn't the local crowd, if you will. I played Willie O'Connor that day. I do remember winning the first leg in 13 darts, and I went 2-1 up, and I finished up getting beat 5-3, I think. But I did make a good account of myself. But after that long drive, it was a bit sort of disappointing to be going out first round and lose out on an extra £1,000 prize money.
In more recent times, we've seen the Challenge Tour come about. You've had some deep runs on that as well. 2015 getting to a final. 2017 you had a semi-final. What's the Challenge Tour been like to play on? Because it seems like, again, the standard on that is going up year on year as well.
The standard is going up. I mean, there's a lot of young lads playing now, and they're knocking 11, 12, 13 darts in. They're actually getting better, and it is good to watch. But the standard is it's fantastic, and that's what keeps me playing, just to try to compete at that level.
Speaking of the big fields, of course, 2020 last year we had 500 plus players in Wigan for Q School, the biggest ever field. The numbers seem to go up and up for Q School. Did you expect it to get as big when you first entered back in 2011?
I did. I thought it would take off because the PDC were getting a lot of exposure. And like I've said, it is professional. It's run by professionals for people who want to be professionals, and it didn't really surprise me. No.
And as I mentioned off air, my colleague Matthew spoke to the other Q School ever present, Ashley Holgate, and I was looking back. I don't think you two have ever played each other at Q School, but are you aware that you are the only two ever present? Have you ever spoke to each other about it before?
I don't know, actually. I've seen his name. I probably would recognise him. I know he's from a different part of the country to me. It was mentioned that me and Ashley last year, I think, was the only two who played in it since its conception. And
has there ever been a year when you thought, no, I'm going to give it a miss this year, Q School, I don't feel on top of my game, or is that desire to play with the best, compete for a tour card stayed with you throughout the 10 years?
I have had them thoughts. Last year in particular, I was suffering with Achilles tendonitis in my left foot, which were giving me a bit of pain. And then that seemed to go better, and then I was playing with my girlfriend, son were playing football, which is stupid at my age, and then I finished up getting plantar fasciitis, which is like an inflammation underneath the right foot. And every time I put pressure on when I was playing darts, it was starting to give me a bit of jib, so I did think about not joining, but touch wood, everything's gone back to normal now, so I'm fighting fit.
Excellent. Well, this Q School is going to be a lot different to the other ones. We've got the 2 stages. The field's been split, obviously influenced by the virus to keep the numbers down. But when you saw the changes, the news come out, what did you make of them?
Yeah, I knew it would have to be run a bit different, given the size of it. There's quite a few lads around the East Lancashire area from Blackburn and Burnley. We tend to travel together. Some of them lads have dropped out, some are playing, some are in my group, some are in a different group, but I'm travelling alone. I didn't think that it would have to change, and they've split it up, and they're, like they're doing their best to keep us all, to keep us safe. So, yeah, it'll be a bit different, but you've just got to adjust.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure that this year's Q School will be one that none of the players will forget, with the restrictions, the rules that we have to follow in these times. But what would it mean for you to, next week or early part of the following week, go and get that tour card and compete with the best for the next 2 years?
Whilst it would be great, I'm not looking that far ahead. I'm going to take every game as it comes. Obviously, it's a class field, but it would mean a lot in the twilight of my darts career to actually pick something up like that and to get a tour card. It really would.
Well, fingers crossed for that. Wish you all the best for Q School next week. Really appreciate your time, and wish you all the best for 2021 as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to Ashley and Ian for joining us, and thanks to Matthew for his help as always. Yes, Q School almost upon us now. Gets underway this upcoming Monday, both in Milton Keynes and Germany. All the players there looking to win tour cards onto the PDC circuit. We'd just like to wish every player that is going to be playing in either the UK or the European Q School the best of luck next week. At some point next week as well, we've got a few extra interviews to bring you. A couple of players that will be playing in the final stage. They've got the bye through to the final stage of Q School, so look forward to that. We'll be back at some point next week, so look forward to those interviews, and until then, hang tight.